Welcome back to This Quiet Time. Anne and Kelly here after quite a hiatus. But we are going to have a special guest today. I'll have him introduce himself in just a moment. You've heard him before. So this is a special edition of This Quiet Time. Unfortunately, nature told us to settle in and do some recording because we're taking your power.
That it did.
Yeah,
like everywhere else in the entire stretch of the U.S., we got to have tornadoes now.
Yeah, so it was a very exciting night. We can't do anything electricity, so we're recording differently through phones. So it might sound
a little different.
So, but let's not take any more time. Why don't we introduce our guest?
Hi, I'm Michael. I'm a friend of the pod. You may have heard me here before when we covered Mothman and Yokai. Today, I am here to talk about Yurei. They are the spirits or ghosts of Japan.
Ooh, I can't wait. I know nothing about these.
I didn't know they were different. I did not know they were different from Yokai. I had no idea that it was something different.
Yes, they are different from Yokai. For context, Yokai are a sort of very vast topic. It covers, like ogres and demons and objects that have come to life, that sort of thing. Yurei, on the other hand, are a person, right? Yokai can be a thing. Yurei is a person. So we have somebody who's passed away. They're usually women, but not always. They're ghosts. They're ghosts who have formed some sort of attachment to a person or place. They usually occur when somebody has experienced a sudden or violent death, and that has prevented them from moving on to the afterlife.
Okay.
Oh.
They're
so very much like our ghosts in that sense.
They're emotionally driven and materialize through these emotional connections to the mortal plane. So they range in, they can be vengeful, they can be sullen. They always have some form of narrative that informs. It's kind of like a Pokemon, there's always this disturbing backstory to them. And
they sound like teenagers.
That kind of informs how they behave or how they haunt or the kind of type they become, because there are Yurei types. So there's, for example, an Onryo, who is somebody who's died and holds a grudge, right? They have some form of hatred or grudge against somebody.
Oh no, I have a coworker who's going to become one of those. He's going to be so busy. I don't know that he'll ever get around to me because he is going to be very busy.
Well, have any of you ever seen the movie The Ring?
Sure. Yeah. Scared the heck out of me.
That is an Onryo.
Oh, because she was angry about being put down in the well.
Wow.
Spoiler alert. I mean, the movie's been out.
The movie's 30 years old at this point.
Yeah, so trauma.
Gotcha.
Yeah, as Jamie Lee Curtis once said, trauma.
Trauma, yes.
Causes these manifestations. It can also happen, I believe, due to burial rites not being completed in the correct way or that sort of thing. Again, I'm not an expert at this. I'm just somebody who really enjoys supernatural Japanese culture. So
Right. Well, I mean, that wouldn't be unheard of worldwide for ghosts.
Yeah.
So, burial rites are very important.
So, in order to identify a Yurei, usually a woman, though there are male Yurei, their stature is sort of pulled into themselves. They have limp wrists. Their hair is dark and long. It's not up. They wear a white kimono, and sometimes they have a triangular Buddhist headpiece that used to be worn during old funeral rites.
Okay.
And besides that, you would probably notice that it's a Yurei as your gaze follows, the human body down, and you see that they have no feet. So they kind of phase out right around the knees.
Okay,
Like
so we're
that.
still kind of still following kind of Western ghosts there.
Yeah, but I have a question. Why do they think it's mostly women? Because not just women experience trauma and attachments and these types of things.
Yep. So.
Okay, you have that?
Yeah. So,
okay.
From my research in the pre-modern era in Japan, women, let's just say, I know this is a shocker to everyone, women weren't treated equally. Everyone aftershock.
Right. So they were more likely to be.
Oh, glad that doesn't happen today.
Right. So, for example, they were made to walk like 2 steps behind a man.
Yeah.
So a lot of the tales that were happening around that time kind of centered around women's rage that they've kept inside of themselves, having to put up with all of that. Right.
So they totally recognized treating them poorly was not great.
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
They totally recognized that. Okay.
So that manifests in the tales that they would tell, and it was like the vengeful woman sort of narrative.
Okay.
So you have these like beautiful scroll pieces of these paintings of Yurei. They're called Yureiga, and they're all very different. There's very interesting ones that sort of depict them in ways that you wouldn't think of. Like one may look like a landscape, but if you follow the silhouette, it's actually a Yurei. There's one particular one. Can't remember the title of it right now, but it represents a male Yurei. And it's sort of the same thing, long dark hair, the white kimono fades down. They're carrying a child. And I believe the story of that one is that it came back after he and his wife had passed. And he feared for, what would happen to the child. So he came back in order to take care of it. So,
gotcha.
When I think of Western ghosts, I always think of sort of haunting locations in particular. I don't really think of haunting people or haunting for human reasons, like I'm going to take care of this baby. That sort of
thing.
Yeah.
I mean, Western ghosts are more unfinished business, yes.
Yeah.
The more unfinished business, and so they get tied to the location where the business needs to be completed.
Yeah.
If people are getting followed, they are definitely it's going to be more like a demon or something.
Yes, I think so as well. That's why Yurei, I'm sure there's much more you can delve deep into that topic of like why is it predominantly women, but from my understanding that's why it's
Well, I'm going to say then, I think from the modern perspective we could say Roe v. Wade. You want ghosts? That's how you get ghosts.
Right?
That's how you get ghosts.
Exactly.
Definitely how you get ghosts. In so many ways.
So there we go. All right, we've solved it.
I like, though, that they do still have some of the misogyny in it, though. It's like they can acknowledge that, yes, we are not treating women fairly, but damn, they're just being extra and can't even get over it in death.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can also take it as like, as many horrible things that happen or come into being culturally. I think it's kind of cool to like the idea of like taking that back and using it as a sign of strength, of don't mess with us sort of thing.
Yeah,
true.
That's true.
Very true.
Like in Onryo, for example, the vengeful spirit, I believe they're the ones that are the most popular when people talk about Yurei, because they're like the ruthless spirits, the dark spirit, that sort of thing. So they're the ones that are going to probably doing a little possessing, and your traditional, more sort of Western haunting. So they'll target somebody in particular, somebody that has earned their vengeance.
Oh, gotcha.
And the thing about Yurei tales is that a lot of them are vague, and that's where the horror comes. Like, Japanese sensibility follows that in horror, if something's left vague, it is scarier than knowing.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the time,
Okay, yeah.
There's this one tale where a man leaves his wife for another woman, and she dies and comes back as an Onryo, and you're left with the Onryo having ripped off his top knot and left it bloodied on the floor, and you don't know what happened. That's just what you're left with. That's sort of
that's horror. Yeah.
Yeah. So
wow.
They're very fun.
Oh, so fun.
So they have more of a physical form than a Western ghost. Like, they can interact with the living world.
Yes, they are. They're very human in their appearance. Just imagine a woman with like pallid skin, long dark hair, a white kimono.
Okay, so there's that kind of look, the pale, cold, scraggly hair, undone white apparition.
Yes, and it ends like right at the knees. It kind of goes into nothingness.
Which is interesting. That is the knees.
Yeah, and for that I have no idea.
I'm assuming it has some significance.
Well, having to walk 2 steps behind the little steps, and you're getting rid of that, being free of that, makes sense.
Well, but male ghosts also don't have feet.
Well, true.
Yeah.
Anyway, carry on. That was just wow, it has to mean something that is mean.
Yeah, I actually don't know, but I can look into that. So,
or maybe it started as something and it just became a thing and nobody thinks about it anymore, like the white.
There's several classic paintings of Yurei. I'm trying to remember right now the earliest of a Yurei, because that's kind of what cemented the look. And I mean, they can take several forms as well. I mean, they all pretty much follow that guideline, but some of them, depending on how they died, will have like a malformed face or burned skin, that sort of thing. Unlike Western ghosts, they pretty much have a uniform, so you'd probably
very interesting.
Tell. Yeah, let's see.
But they're more conformist than the West, so.
Yeah, but think of how many Western ghosts are women in white.
So one of the earliest silk scroll paintings dates back to, the second half of the 18th century. It is...
Hey, that's been for a while.
Yeah, It is by Maruyama Okio, The Ghost of Oyuki, dated 1750. And it is the classic long, scraggly hair. This one actually disappears right around the mid-thigh area. I find that Western Ghosts Unfinished Business is very like, I'm just going to kill you, or I have suffered a deep unjust, so I'm going to haunt the place I suffered it in. They take on a very narrative storytelling aspect. I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but that's sort of in my head what differentiates a Yurei versus like a Western ghost. It's more about the tale.
Yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah, and I keep thinking of them like Pokemon, because Pokemon's design are very narratively driven in some way. So in my head, that is an easy fit. So for example, we can cover a tale here. We can all learn about the child raising Yurei, or the candy buying ghost.
Yes.
The tale, yeah, it's quite melancholy. It's interesting. So the tale of the child raising ghost has several variations that are told all across Japan. but most of them have some of these elements mixed in. One night, in a candy shop, a man was closing up for the night. It had been a long, slow day.
I'd hunt candy.
Yeah. And he was excited to get home and unwind. As he was preparing the last of the stock for the following day, he heard a knock at the front door. He was surprised by this because who would be, looking for candy at this hour? Most of his customer base would probably be asleep. He makes his way to the front of the store and opens the door. And to his surprise, a woman stands before him in the dead of night, her white kimono looking almost luminous under the moonlight. She apologizes for bothering him this late and explains that she's in need of some candy. The candy seller looks perplexed. Her face is sullen, but kind, as she begins to beg him to sell her some candy. He lets her in, and he presents her with some candy. She says that all she can afford is 1 sen worth. The shopkeep wraps a single piece of amber candy in exchange for the 1 sen. She bows in gratitude before stepping out into the warm summer night, candy in hand. The next night, around the same time, she visits again. She wants a piece of candy for 1 single sen. He obliges once again, but this time he questions her, asking about herself. Where does she come from? Why does she want candy at this hour? She ignores
Very good questions.
right? She ignores him and leaves once the exchange is done. This happens for 5 more nights, and it repeats in the same manner each time. On the 7th night, his fascination with the strangely dressed woman got the better of him. When she visited on this night, her demeanor was very sad. With a frown, she asks him for a piece of candy, but explains that she has ran out of money. She begs him for it, tears running down her pallid cheeks. The shopkeep smiles at her and hands her the candy free of charge. She thanks him and leaves, as she always has, but on this night, the shopkeep waits a few moments before following her. Into the summer night, she walked, leading him away from the residential district towards a temple. Keeping his distance, the shopkeep observes the woman walk past a temple and into its cemetery. Here is where he witnesses the woman approach a grave and then with the blink of an eye disappear. Cautiously, he approaches. He can see no suggestion of her ever being there, but he hears a wailing in the dead of night. It sounds muffled,
Oh God!
but close by. He thinks to himself, could it be that it's coming from the grave? With all the courage he can muster, he puts an ear to the ground and hears what sounds like a baby crying.
Oh no!
He runs to the temple, awakens a monk, and with a shovel in hand, the two of them work at digging up the grave. And that's where they find a perfectly preserved body of a woman that he had been selling candy to for the past 7 nights, and in her pale arms, a crying baby grasping onto the amber chunks of sweets.
What?
Oh my.
So
the baby was buried alive with his mother?
that's what I asked. The first time I heard this story, like, how? But what I've come to learn, it's more about just the message. So the message of the narrative is that
She's taking care of the baby.
exactly, even in her death, she's taking care of her child. And the sen that she gives the candy seller, I believe that is a callback to the currency you'd be buried with. in order to cross the
Okay,
river
I was going to ask.
Senzu.
I was going to ask if it was something she was buried with, or if
it.
it was left as an offering or something at her grave or something.
Yeah, so it's literally the river
Okay.
Styx, but it's called the River Senzu. And
Gotcha.
so she also gave up crossing over in order to take care of her child.
Wow. Wow. That's
Yeah.
wild.
That one stuck
And
out
sad.
to
But she had feet. But she had feet. He would have
did she have
noticed if
feet?
this woman floated in and out of his store every night for a week.
You know, that's never mentioned. So
I mean, if he's following her and has no idea she's a ghost, he must have feet.
it's
Or
true.
he's very unobservant. It's possible he's also very unobservant.
Yeah, I mean, also,
It didn't fit the narrative of this story for her to be too obvious.
Right.
yeah. I mean, for all I know, if I dig deeper into it, I'm sure they may be able to manifest legs.
Oh, so that if it fits their need.
Yeah. Oh, well, I just found a woodblock painting depicting a different Yurei, and the kimono does hit the ground in this one. So
Okay.
So they may not have feet, but you can't see it.
correct. So that may be the
That
idea.
makes more sense.
So, next I'm going to cover something on the more horror side of Yurei. Comparatively to our last tale, where it's more melancholy, this one is attached to an actual location with actual trauma and tragedy attached to it. So it's not, very chipper, but very haunting, so I wanted to share it. So in Hokkaido, there is a tunnel called the Jumon Tunnel. Construction of it began in 1912. It finished in 1914. And it cut through the Jumon Ridge. So it's a mountain. And this was dug out by hand.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, wow. If you ever hate your day job, just remember, at least you're not digging a tunnel by hand through a mountain.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was done by taco laborers. They first came into existence on the island of Hokkaido in 1887 as prison laborers.
Oh no, prisoners.
Okay.
That never ends well.
So, needless to say, their living conditions were very poor.
Mm-hmm.
They ate standing up for the most part. There were a hierarchy of 3 levels. I guess depending on who you knew, you'd be able to eat either sitting down or standing up. They slept in essentially cottages on hard surfaces. So if you imagine like a cottage, and there's these 2 rectangular large blocks on either side with a sort of passageway in the middle, and the blocks are their beds. And the prison guards could strike the very beginning of them and send a loud noise through the entirety of whoever's sleeping on whichever side was struck to wake them up.
Rude.
Yeah, so kind and needed. So Hokkaido is known for being very cold. It is horrendously cold in Hokkaido. And since their sleeping conditions, living conditions were inhumane, as they dug, a lot of them died or got ill. And those that died were thrown into a mass grave. That's
always a good way to get ghosts. Mass graves, man, that is like a ghost factory.
Yep, and since they were eating terribly as well, many of them died from malnutrition, from the cold. Even if you weren't on the brink of dying, but you were exhausted, either due to your age, due to the cold, whatever, they would still throw you in these mass graves if you couldn't work into the hole.
Whoa.
Wow. That so literal into the bin with you, you're not useful.
Yes, into the bin, exactly.
Alright. Way too literal.
If the forced labor wasn't enough, there were also human pillars in the walls.
Pillars?
Yes.
In the walls?
Yes.
Ew.
In the foundation of the tunnel. So they're usually associated with castles or bridges, the human pillars. I'll explain them in a sec. But at least in one case, they seem to have been used in this tunnel. Now, human pillars are human sacrifices. They're buried alive in the foundations of usually castles or bridges.
So they did want ghosts.
As offering to the gods.
Okay, those gods suck.
That's
Hey, you want us to acknowledge you? You need to bury living people in your foundation.
And the tunnel isn't very long. It's half a kilometer. But it extends through very remote territory in Hokkaido. So again, even when, these people were, working out there and they may have had the thought of like escaping or whatever, they were far out there in isolation. So odds aren't good in either case. And since they're regularly hit with harsh winters, you can imagine that the body count probably is high. I don't actually know what the body count ended up being.
Sounds like it would be horrifically high.
Yeah.
Right,
But
there's just no way it wouldn't be.
In 1970, yes, that's right. In 1970, a repair crew entered the tunnel to patch a crack from an earthquake.
Oh.
And what did they find behind the brick? Several skeletons that apparently had been bricked up behind the wall in a standing position.
Oh my god. Being bricked up alive to die in a wall in the standing position, I would be like, not only am I haunting you, I'm gonna haunt your entire family line for the rest of eternity.
Yeah.
It's not enough that you have to die in a wall, but you have to die standing up.
So I'm going to quote from this book, Yurei Attack, The Japanese Ghost Survival Guide by Hiroko Yoda and Matt Alt. So it says...
What an amazing book name.
It's a great book.
Yeah.
None who had worked on the project were alive to tell the tale, but further excavations revealed a burial pit near the entrance filled with dozens and dozens of human bodies. Some say hundreds. The stories were true.
That's probably what you did not want to find out on your job.
No.
Yeah, so there are several
sounds
tales.
like they were engineers.
There are several tales that cover hauntings of trains, because it isn't a pedestrian tunnel, so a train will pass through it, and for example, a conductor will see what they think is a human walking down the tunnel on the tracks. They'll stop. Upon closer inspection, they see that they're very bloodied, blood coming from somewhere on their head. Of course, once they go to see if it's somebody that's hurt themselves, it disappears.
Oh, right.
Another case, I believe somebody saw something on a train. Passengers claimed that they could hear moaning that sounded like someone was suffocating close to the tunnel. The station attendant who worked at Jomon Station went mad and fell ill to a mysterious disease. Yes. So the other thing is that people who work for Jomon Station, them, family members, people close to them, appear to be affected by mysterious conditions, falling ill or getting hurt, that sort of thing.
Wow. And this is then attributed to their proximity to these ghosts. These Yurei.
Yep. Like, a station attendant's wife threw herself in front of a train inside the tunnel and killed herself. Now, whether that's connected to this quote-unquote curse or, other circumstances, mental health circumstances, I don't know.
Right.
They're not. They usually are not going to attribute it to that. They're going to attribute it to the ghost in these stories.
Yeah. So this other source that I have says, this other article says that this is where an area where the skeletons of roughly 50 railway workers and their family members were discovered. It was at a statue erected about 1 kilometer from the tunnel.
So these weren't people who built it. These were people who worked for the railway.
That I did not know. Because I have sources up, but I did not. Yeah, it says people blame these incidents on the spirits of the dead. And in 1959, a Kanwa Jizo statue was erected about 1 kilometer from the tunnel. This was an area where the skeletons of roughly 50 railway workers and their family members were discovered.
And their family members?
Wow.
Yeah. And then 1968, the earthquake hit and the tunnel was damaged. And that's when they found the
two standing up.
Over 100 workers from the original tunnel were discovered near the entrance.
Oh.
Bones were broken and showed evidence of violence and mistreatment.
A horrible situation.
And apparently this is when people finally discovered how horrible the working conditions were for the original laborers.
Oh, so they hadn't known up till then.
So it's just been legend, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so very disturbing.
I don't know that I've ever heard a story, it doesn't matter which culture, of prisoners being used as labor, and it didn't end in they were treated horribly.
Seeing the ghost or... Yeah.
Wow.
But wow. Even their families, though, so I guess if a family member of a worker died, they also just got thrown in?
Well,
sounds like that was post-building.
Yeah. The 50 railway workers and their family members were discovered later in around 1959.
I was going to say, Japan needed some OSHA in a big...
Yeah, because 1968 is when the earthquake hit, and that's when they found the human pillars and the burial area
outside.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being the people who found that? Being like, okay, we've heard these stories, but people exaggerate. This didn't really happen. It's just a story. And then you open up a wall and you're like, why are there skeletons?
Yeah. There's actually dead people in here.
I just can't even begin to imagine the feeling.
Like I said earlier, these are probably engineers. They are not emotionally or anything equipped to deal with this.
Oh, absolutely not.
Apparently,
they are.
The human pillars were relocated and reburied at a public cemetery.
Oh, that's nice.
I wonder if that stopped some of the haunting
shenanigans.
Nope, does not happening.
Yeah, there's that too.
Well, this article from Kawabana.net ends its article with, in 1980, a monument was erected in Bishibe City, looking down over the Seikaku main line near excuse my butchering, Kanahana Station.
It's better than mine.
Was in commemoration. Oh, I mean butchering of both languages. Commemoration of all victims.
Commemoration.
Exactly. It's the curse of being bilingual.
Yeah.
Of all the victims who died during the construction of Jomon Tunnel, but it doesn't appear to have appeased the dead. On contrary, hauntings and strange occurrences reportedly continue in the area to this day.
There's the answer.
So they were too invested in their revenge at that point to let it go.
Yeah.
Or
So
there's
that is a
plenty more
difference between
unfound.
Western. That is definitely a difference from Western ghosts.
Like,
Since typically, burying them properly in most Western ghost stories would resolve the haunting. Acknowledging
Right.
the atrocity, and they would be like, okay, my mission's done, I'm out. So that is a difference.
grief is a powerful thing.
Right, but apparently the ghosts hang on to that emotion longer there. There is no resolving the haunting, is what I'm hearing.
Maybe not until all of them are found.
In some other cases, there's a tale of a woman who passed away, and she kept revisiting her family, but she would just sit in this one room and sort of stare at this cabinet. And the family searched the cabinet, they couldn't find anything, and emptied it out, but she would still reappear. And finally, her husband went to a local temple, talked to a monk. They came over and tried speaking to the Yurei, and finally he figured out that under a panel of one of the drawers was a love letter that she had, I think, received many, many, many years ago, I think before her husband, that she had kept. And he promised her that I will read it, but I will be the only person to ever know the contents of this, and that I will, burn it. I'll take care of it for you. And that caused her to move on.
Okay, so that she was able to resolve it then, but it wasn't a revenge issue.
Exactly.
This was literally an unresolved issue.
Yes. It was my browser history has not been cleared. Please, monk, clear my browser history.
This is true. This is true, and you should always do that. Always do that for your friends.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's interesting, though, that she then was wanting her husband to be aware of it.
I think she wasn't directly, because she wouldn't say anything. It was just a manifestation of like, there's something here, and I don't know if, what would have happened if her husband had been the one to find it, if it would have been the same reaction. I don't know if he had found it, that would have elicited a different response, becoming I don't know, vengeful. I don't know. I don't think vengeful, but
Yeah, I guess it probably depends on his reaction to it.
Exactly.
Really interesting that she wanted it found. Clearly wanted it found. There was no doubt.
Yeah.
Oh, it's very interesting that the way that one played out.
It is.
So I think that's all I have to cover for Yurei this time.
Okay, they're similar, but not quite
some
the same.
differences. Yeah.
Yeah, they're much more connected to narrative and reflecting that narrative in some way, more than what I think of, which is just I'm haunting a location due to unfinished business. Like, it does tie to unfinished business, but it is not always manifest in a way of vengefulness or anger. It can be sort of quiet and sullen and in the corner, and makes you feel bad for
like the woman, coming and getting candy.
Yeah. Exactly.
Definitely different.
Very.
I didn't expect that.
Yeah. Well, I was really confused on that one at first because I'm like, coffin births are never live. What's going on here? It makes more sense. It's just a
Right.
narrative thing.
Right. That the baby was alive in the story.
Right.
And
right.
yeah, feeding it candy, I was like, lady!
Good joke!
I think in one of the
Making us
stories,
go.
in one of the variations of the tale, I think she was melting the candy with her hand, which implies body heat, but
It does.
Right.
And was liquefying it to sort of feed it that way.
Gotcha.
So I wonder, do they have body heat? She obviously passed for alive when interacting with the shopkeeper.
Yeah. Also,
So you would think that he would have noticed if her hand was cold when she handed him the coins, or...
yeah. I have no idea. It's
There's always so many questions with stories like this, because they just become, take it at face value and go.
Right.
Yes, like the real, core of this narrative is, mother's love transcends death.
Yes.
So it just throws all of the, there's plot holes, but please suspense disbelief sort of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
But, since the story hinges so strongly on him not realizing what she is, that it makes you go, how was she different?
Well,
yeah.
I guess it could be like if he was just seeing her by candlelight or lantern light.
True, this was not a modern era. She wasn't under bright fluorescence or anything.
Yeah, fluorescent lights will make anybody look like a ghost.
Exactly.
Yeah,
everyone looks dead.
Bathrooms. I always look like I died last week at the work bathrooms.
Oh yeah. I don't know why people stand in there and crimp. You are not getting your best results.
No.
I was always like, how has nobody called like a coroner or something the way I look today? It's like, gotta just be the lights. Otherwise, they would definitely be alarmed if I looked like this all day long. But we work with engineering types, so maybe they just didn't notice. It might take them a while.
Alrighty. Well, that was really interesting. Do you have any other types
really
you'd like to share with us in the future?
I mean, in the future, we can always cover some others. There are Abume and Goryo and this other one I can't pronounce correctly without butchering it completely, so I will not.
We'll give you time to practice.
Yeah, those are interesting because their form are similar to that of a mermaid or merman.
Oh, cool. We've talked about mermaid type forms in the British Isles. So yeah, I'd love to talk about those.
Yep, it's like the Selkies and Kelpies and all that fun stuff. We didn't actually specifically cover Kelpies yet. So we now have a picture of one from that museum, so...
Yeah, we do.
Well, everyone should go listen to those as well, and go listen to the Mothman and Yokai episodes.
Oh, yes. Definitely.
Yes, and Mothman is going to be getting an update after this summer, so...
Yep.
Excited.
We've been doing some further research on Mothman and some of the stuff related to him, including Indrid Cold, the space alien, and the Hopkinsville and Hellier Goblin.
Yes.
They're all related.
We hope to have an episode on the Dover Demon soon, which will bring us into the Hopkinsville, Kellyville goblins.
Yes.
So,
awesome.
I'm hoping. Yeah. So it'll be fun stuff.
Yeah, if we ever get power again.
I know.
No more tornadoes.
Oh, definitely no more. It's wild.
Tornadoes.
Okay, well, I guess we should wrap up.
Yeah.
So,
thank you for having me on.
We should.
Yes,
Thank you so
and just
much
whenever you're ready, let us know. We'll always be happy to have you on.
We love these Japanese monsters that we didn't know anything about. So,
Yeah.
do you have any explanations? I have a Japanese monster question for you. What is with the fear of giant disembodied body parts? Like floating heads with a spine and giant skeletons. And have you seen anything that explains that? Because it's very culturally specific.
Well, I think in our last yokai episode, I covered the Olodokuro.
Yes, the skeleton. Mhm.
Yeah.
Giant skeleton, yes.
Yeah, which is a collective infuriation, sadness, sense of neglect that can result in spontaneous reanimation in the form of an Olodokuro. I don't know why it's an iconic thing. That is
Well, you just see it so much more.
That is an interesting thing to research.
Yeah, because it seems like when you start getting into any kind of Japanese monsters, you start seeing disembodied body parts, especially heads.
Well, I know that, for example, there is the Wanyudo. It is one of the oldest yokai, and it essentially looks like imagine like a wagon wheel with a head attached to it in the middle.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I just wonder what's so culturally significant about
No idea.
dismemberment.
So they're not like the Egyptians
obviously
where you had to
stuff.
keep your body.
Oh, right. I mean, there's obviously burial things. Now, are the burial rites issues? Sorry, I have just one more question. Are they tied more to one religious background than another, or did they come out after, say, Buddhism became more popular, or Shinto?
I think that they had Shinto first, and then Buddhism came about. And I may be 1,000% wrong about this, but I think Buddhism is what has influenced like current burial rites in Japan.
Okay, the most. Okay.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
I actually don't know what Shinto burial rites would be like. I think in my head, I'm thinking it's all Buddhist. So the white kimono, because I believe the white kimono is only for the dead or monks.
Okay.
Remembering correctly.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Just leaving us with thoughts for future episodes.
Yes.
It just always strikes me as very weird because you know perfectly well that body horror is not my thing. And so that I have noticed that Japanese ghosts and monsters and horror is very body horror heavy. Even like the mutilated face of the woman wearing the mask and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That they're much more body horror heavy than Western stories.
Yeah, they're very reflective of the way they died, or sort of what they represent. They're very literal in that, so the designs of these creatures usually reflect some of that. Again, it reminds me of Pokemon.
Right?
We might have to do a Pokemon edition.
There are spooky Pokemon.
There are.
Actually very horrifying.
Oh yeah. You see, Rad taught me a lot.
Tied to things.
Yeah.
The Pokemon Special Edition. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Horrors of the Pokemon.
Yeah.
In a way, Pokemon.
It's legit.
In a way, Pokemon are an extension of yokai, in a strange way.
I can see that.
Yeah, because yokai follow the sort of Shinto belief that there is a living being in everything. So I can see that translating very easily to Pokemon.
Right? Which actually makes it even more horrible that you stuff them in a ball and
make them
only let them out so they can fight. It's like,
yes.
Here, you want to be out for a little bit? Okay, but you gotta fight this thing and you're probably gonna pass out.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
It's
So disturbing.
But, what do I... Alright. Well, that was fun.
Yes.
That was lots of fun.
Okay, cool
Okay.
beats. So, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye. Have unpleasant
Bye.
dreams.